We are continuing in the Rambam's Laws of War. We are in chapter 7 of the Laws of War. Halacha Zayin. Says the Rambam, we're talking now about all the people that come back from war or don't even go to war in the first place. We're discussing those people. Says the Rambam, Echad ha'me'ares et ha'betula, v'echad ha'me'ares et ha'almana. Whether a person marries a woman who's never been married before, or someone marries an almana, a widow. What's the idea about marrying a widow or someone who's been married before? Right. Okay. So there's a little bit of a difference in the status of marriage. For example, where do you practically see it, Baruch? Aside from what we write in the Ketubah, where would you see it play out? Right. Exactly. As it relates to Sheva Berachot. So as it relates to the Sheva Berachot, doesn't matter in this context, says the Rambam. V'chen im nafla lo yivama, or if a yivama falls on him. What does it mean a yivama? So his brother passes away, and that means, and they didn't have children. Yes, that means that now he's obligated in the mitzvah of yibum. Yibum is to marry one's brother's wife. That's a halakha, the laws of yibum. Even if he has a wife. Afilu chamisha achim. Even if there are 5 brothers that are obligated in yibum. Umet echad mehem, and one of them dies, kulam chozrin. All of them come back from war. So the exemption of marriage applies to any marriage. It also applies to yibum, even if it's all the siblings in the family. So if 5 warriors are at war and they all nafla lehem yivama, right? They all have a situation where they're obligated in yibum. They all come back from war. Probably till they figure out who's getting married to who. I mean, at the end of the day, only one of them is going to marry her. So we're going to have to figure out who is the one that's going to marry her and then send the rest back to war. What happens to somebody who refuses? That's true. In the laws of Yibum, the Rambam says like this. Ketzad mitzvat chalitza. How do we do the mitzvah of chalitza? Hayivama holechet achar yivama l'makom shehu sham. The yivama goes to her yabam, yivama with a hey, yeah, to the place that he is. Uva dayanim, and she comes to the judges. Vehem korin lo, and they summon him. V'notrim lo etzah hahogenet lo vela, and they give him advice that is good for him and for her. Meaning, they calculate both sides of the story. Maybe for her it's good, but for him it's not. Maybe for him, for her it's good. Whatever the other opposite would be. If it's good advice to do yibum, yuatzin oto liyabem. They tell him, let's do yibum. And if it's good to do chalitza, kegon shaita hi yalda v'hu zaken, or hi zekena v'hu yeled. For example, if one of them is older than the other one, there's an age gap. Now, you know, a zaken and a yelda does not mean adult and a baby. There's a significant amount of age difference between them. Say our chachamim, it's a good enough reason for someone not to get married. They give him advice, it's better to do chalitza. Now, they do the whole process of the chalitza, like you mentioned there with the shoe. I was in a chalitza before. It's very interesting. It's a very interesting ceremony. ואחר כך עומדת ויורקת בארץ כנגד פניו, רוק הנראה לדיינים. After they do the shoe and all that, take off the shoe, she spits in front of him in a way that it has to be enough spit that the דיינים can see it. שמצוות חליצה שיהיו שניהם עומדים בשעת קריאה ובשעת רקיקה. They both have to be standing in the time of the spitting, the calling and the spitting. וצריכים לדיינים לראות הרוק יוצא מפיה. And the judges have to see the spit coming out of her mouth. ואחר כך מקרין לה, and afterwards they read to her, ככה יעשה לאיש. This is what should be done to a man. Do you guys remember? The Torah is a little more exciting. Sure. The famous one. So she comes to the judge. She comes to the gates of the city to the elders. Says the Torah in Devarim 25. ואמרה, and she says, מאין יבמי להקים לאחיו שם בישראל לא אהבה יבמי. This man, he refuses to make a name for his brother among the people of Israel. He refuses to take me as a yibama. וקראו לו זקני עירו ודיברו אליו. And the elders call him and speak to him. ועמד ואמר לא חפצתי לקחתה. He said, I don't want to take her. וניגשה יבימתו אליו לעיני הזקנים, וחלצה נעלו מעל רגלו. She comes in front of him, in front of the judges, and she takes off his shoe. But when I saw Yibum happen, it was a Haredi couple. So the whole thing, and they weren't a couple. He was Haredi and she was Haredi. And to like take off his shoe is a very, it's very complicated. V'yarka b'fanav, and she spits in front of him. V'anta v'amra, and she answers as kacha yaseh la'ish. This is what should happen to a man. Asher lo yivneh et bet achiv, who refuses to build the house of his brother. V'nikra shemo v'Yisrael, and his name should be called in the Jewish people, Bet Chalutz Hana'ar, the home of the one whose shoe was taken. And this whole process is also has to do. I don't want it to right this moment to get stuck on the ideas behind Chalitza, but just for a moment, when going to war, there is an urgency that is felt that how could your brothers go to war and you stay here? There's a certain reality that Moshe Rabbenu, right, tells the Jewish people. Your brothers will go to war and you will stay here and not going to war. There's a responsibility. People don't go to war just to save themselves. They go to save their nation. On this side, you find something else, which is a man who does chalitza because he refuses to step up for his brothers. And that's maybe even in a situation where it makes sense that he doesn't step up. He's not able to marry her. It doesn't work for their lives to get married to each other. They don't want to marry each other, whatever reason that is. And still he's considered a person, he has every good excuse in the book. He's still considered a deserter of his brother's home. How much more so people who refuse to actually step up? Imagine how many chalitzas you would have to do today for people that are not willing even to fight for their brothers, or to help their brothers who are fighting, or even to pray for their brothers who are fighting, in any level whatsoever. There's all kinds of details in chalitza, but for those of you who studied Masechet Yevamot, there's a lot of details here. I'm actually not even a world's expert in the laws of Yibum, but I will tell you that this directly connects to us, but we're going to see chalitza in the next halakha. So wait, we're going to see chalitza in the next halakha. He says here, there's another category, a person who comes back from the war. Kidesh isha me'achshav. If he marries a woman now, lachar 12 chodesh, for after 12 months from now. How does that work? He does kiddushin now. Look, I see Adin over here. Just Shalom Aleichem. So now he gives her, he does the kiddushin with her, and he says, "You will be mekudeshet to me in 12 months from now." So when did the action happen? Now, when does the kiddushin take place? When is she married? In 12 months from now. Yeah, this is different. No. This is kiddushin that's on a condition of time. Yeah, but this is different than saying, okay, in 12 months I will marry you. That's like an erusin. Here it's a kiddushin. Now he's doing kiddushin for 12 months from now. We have regrets? She wanted more time. So, v'shalam azman l'milchama. And that 12 months came up in the middle of war. Chozer uvano. He comes back at that 12-month mark. He is exempt from war because that's when his year of marriage begins. Hamachazir et gerushato. Somebody who remarries the woman who he divorced. There's a special mitzvah. I once gave a shiur here a long time ago about his mitzvah to get divorced. One of the 630 mitzvot is to get divorced. But from here you see that not everybody can fulfill all 613 mitzvot. No, meaning there's no commandment to fulfill all 613. Am Yisrael fulfills the mitzvot for each other. If somebody needs to get divorced, there's a mitzvah to do it in a bedin with a get. But just to get divorced is not a mitzvah. I mean, that's not the. And they said I saw a sign on Sunday. They said that if you don't have a chance to see the eclipse, you could pay $180 to this organization, and 10 rabbis will watch it for you. Like there's certain mitzvahs. Today they do these things where they pay money to do shiluach haken, or all kinds of. That's a ridiculous concept. They didn't do it yet for divorce. Imagine it'll be a bedin. They set up gitin, and then there's a mitzvah to remarry the person who you divorced. Imagine the whole day would be a revolving door. Divorce, marriage, the same person, over and over and over and over again. There are people like that. Wait till they come up with that mitzvah. So when is it a mitzvah to get divorced? When a couple is going to separate, it's a mitzvah to be divorced. And there's also a mitzvah that if a couple got divorced and they're able to reconcile their differences and get back together again, there's a mitzvah of hamachazirat gerushato. Somebody who can remarry the person they divorced. There are exceptions to that. One cannot marry their divorcee if they were with somebody else. So this is already in the details of marriage, not marriage. That I'm not going to stick my head in right now. Also, he cannot remarry his divorcee if he's a kohen. He's a kohen. Because a kohen cannot marry a divorcee. And even though it's his divorcee, he can't marry her. And that's why when we divorce a kohen, we make it really complicated. Because I sat on a bedin for a get for a kohen. And it was, I think he was a lucky guy in the story. But I think that, no, true, I knew the couple. He still had to pay her $11,000 a month. He was a very wealthy man. $11,000 a month for how long? So I don't even know if that really considered divorce. Really, are they separated, or he's still paying for her lifestyle? So what is that? But at the end of the day, the kohen cannot marry his gerushato. So hamachazir et gerushato, somebody who remarries the woman who he divorced. V'me'ares isha ha'asura lo. And somebody who marries a woman that is forbidden for him to marry. How can you marry someone that is forbidden for you to marry? Okay, so there are situations where the marriage doesn't even work. I mean, there has to be a situation. If a Jew marries somebody who is not Jewish, are they married? According to halakha, there's no kiddushin here. Nothing was chal. Yeah, so that's not a marriage. But there are situations where the marriage is, and if you want to have a shiur on all the forbidden and permissible marriage, we can do that, but not right now. But the point here is, what if someone marries someone they're not allowed to marry? Do they come back from? Kagon almana the kohen gadol. Let's say a widow to a kohen gadol. A kohen gadol is forbidden from marrying an almana. Or grusha v'chalutza the kohen hediot. Or a divorced woman, or a woman who had chalitza done to her for a regular kohen. A regular kohen cannot marry a woman who's divorced. He also cannot marry a woman who had chalitza done. Meaning she's not divorced, but she had chalitza done to her. I mean, we're going to talk about chalitza in just a moment. A regular kohen. Yeah? I mean, there's a lot going on right here. For one paper. Just stay with one paper. Mamzeret untina liYisrael. A mamzeret is an illegitimately born child of a marriage that is not allowed to be. We're going to discuss all these inside. Or a netina. What is a netina? Close. They're called nitinim because they were shva. You know who? The Givonim. We'll talk about them in a moment. Uvat Yisrael lemamzer unatin, or daughter of Israel to a mamzer or natin, eno chozer. All these people, they don't come back from war. Either because the marriage is not considered important enough, or because the marriage is not considered a good marriage or halachically permissible marriage that would exempt someone from war. So imagine this is the same scenario as somebody who was like in the other stories, they were figuring out how many trees they have to plant, or if they rent out their house, or they build an extra room, or all of these scenarios where they're maybe trying to get out of war. Here it's also the same thing. He doesn't want to go to war. He fails with divorce. Yeah, let's get married so I can get out of war. A mamzel could be the greatest Talmid Chacham of the generation. Could answer everyone's halachic questions. Yeah. A mamzer Talmid Chacham is more important than a Kohen Gadol who's not. We would save his life before that of a Kohen Gadol, who is a regular person. Particularly marriage. Marriage and their problem is not them. Their problem is their lineage. As a matter of pedigree of sorts. And it's not one we made up, it's the Torah's rules. And this whole idea is intended to keep them separate, at least from the general stock of Israel for X amount of time. The Mamzerim are a very hard area of halakha. That's why our rabbis try to do everything they possibly can do to change people's status of mamzerut, or not to avoid situations of mamzerut in any which way possible. Let's look at some of these halachot in detail. They're important. Let's look at them. Let me see where we'll start. Let's talk about chalitza first. We mentioned it first. Let's talk about it first. So if you go to the laws of ishut, I ran out of these little orange tabs that I bookmarked my books with, so you'll please bear with me as I flip through pages. Okay. Says the Rambam in Laws of Ishut. You have Ishut, yeah? Maybe in the beginning of the book. No, it's too far. It's not in this volume. There's a Mishneh Torah like this one, but it's all in one volume. I'm thinking to buy some copies for the Beit HaKnesset, so when we do these classes, everybody can have a book that are on the same page numbers. We have here Aleph Halacha Zayin. The Rambam says, "Chalutza harehi kagirusha." A woman who was gone through chalitza, and I'm sure Art Scroll has a fancy word for that. She's considered divorced. V'asura lekohen midivrei sofrim, and she's prohibited to the kohen only from area of rabbinic law. V'nitinim, the nitinim, they are givonim. The people of Givon who converted to Judaism. Elchanan, tell us the story again. Yehoshua comes to conquer Eretz Israel.
And Givonim, there are two reasons. The Givonim come with whipped clothes, bread, broken wine bottles, and they come to the Israel and say they're from a faraway land. And they heard about what happened to the kings of the Mol and the splitting of the Yamsuf, not the Yaldim. So why did they say the Yaldim? Because the Yaldim
for the news to travel. They were smart. That's what they say about the Yarden. Okay, good. Now, why are they trying to trick Yehoshua? Who are they really?
Actually,
they're from the 7 nations, and they're afraid that they're going to get killed by Yehoshua because they didn't know halakha. Yeah, that's why they were. Yeah. And then tell me, so they tricked Yoshua, and Yoshua finds out afterwards.
He finds out that they tricked him, and he said, "Today, you are cursed, and you be our wood choppers and water carriers for the rest of."
So even though he lets them stay part of the Jewish people, he didn't have to do that, right? He ends up letting them stay, and he gives them a job. They were given, the Netinim, they were given to the Ben Mikdash. They would serve as wood choppers and water carriers for the Ben Mikdash. Now, Elchanan, later in history.
Later in history.
You remember this story? Wait. You remember this story? Yeah. But really, technically, they're Jews. So they are able to bring us water. Elchanan, what happens later in the generation of King Shaul?
So Shaul figures out that the beat hiding, and I think he was Eli the Khan Gadol.
He finds them, Rabbanit, he finds
Hiding in
Nov.
the place of the body,
And Shaul decides they're helping David.
kill out the Kohanim are helping him, so he kills out all the Kohanim and some of the Gibonim, and all the Gibonim. The Gibonim then, after David the Melech conquered Shaul, they tell David, "Now we've lost our job. We work for that. Now we have no job. So we want 7 people from the family of Shaul should be killed." And David goes with it.
And David agrees, and he gives them 7 people from the house of Shaul to be killed. And they kill those people, and they hang their bodies for the whole summer. Their bodies are hanging there until David finds out, and he takes them down, and buries the whole story. But this is the story of the Givonim. Are the Givonim Jewish? Yeah. Vantinim hareihem kamamzerim. They have the halachic status of mamzerim. Echad zecharim, v'echad nekevot, whether they're male or female. V'isuram midivrei sofrim. And the prohibition to marry them is a rabbinic one. And we're going to talk about Givonim in a moment. Uvichot isurei bia yidber lecha mahem anitinim. It said later in the laws of forbidden marriages, relationships, I will tell you who are the Givonim, or the nitinim. Let's look at one more place where Rambam mentions chalitza. Is going to be in the laws of isurei bia, forbidden relations. The Rambam there in chapter 17, he says, "Hachalutza asura lekohen midivrei sofrim." Chalutza is forbidden to marry a kohen on a rabbinic level. Mipenei shehi kegerusha, because she is like a woman who is divorced. Umakin oto makat mardut midivrehem. And if they get married, then we beat him rabbinic beatings from the bedin. Kohen shenasa safek chalutza. If someone married a safek chalutza, meaning we're not sure if she was chalutza or not, how you could be in the situation of safek chalutza? Great question. Or maybe the chalitza was done. Okay. En motziin ota mitachtav. We don't force them to get divorced. Vi keshera uvlada kasher. And she is keshera and her baby is kasher also. Mipnei shelo gazru al safek chalutza and al chalutza vadait. Because the decree was only made on an actual chalutza and not a safek chalutza. That mamash doesn't matter to us right now. Let's talk about the next category of people. We mentioned here the mamzeret. Yeah, we mentioned mamzeret. If you look in the laws of isurei bia, again, that's forbidden relationships, chapter Tet Vav, 15. Halacha Aleph. Ezehu mamzer ha'amur b'Torah. Says the Rambam. You found it? Who is the mamzer that is referred to in the Torah when the Torah says mamzer? Ze haba me'erva min ha'arayot. This is a person who has relations with one of the forbidden people to have forbidden relations with. So either somebody who makes you chayav karet, or somebody who is obligated the death penalty from the bedin. That's what makes one a mamzer. Chutz min hanida, except for the nida. Shaben mimena pagum veno mamzer. Because the baby of a nida is not a mamzer, he's just considered pagum. What is in pagum? Something wrong in the pedigree of the family. But technically, they are kasher Jews.
But are you able to become a nun?
There's no practical ramification to it. Meaning, is going to be any of the children of this relationship that is forbidden. אבל הבעל שאר העריות, בין באונס, בין ברצון, בין בזדון, בין בשגגה, הוולד ממזר. Whether it happened intentionally or unintentionally, it was forced or not forced, all of that, those relationships make the baby a mamzer. ואחד זכרים. The woman's not punished for that. But the baby, unfortunately, is a mamzer. ואחד זכרים ואחד נקבות אסורים לעולם, and whether male or female, they're forbidden forever. Like it says, שנאמר, גם דור עשירי, also the 10th generation, לא יבוא בקהל Hashem, means forever. That's the definition of gam, also the 10th generation. So you want to see, let's see if I can look up fast enough in the Moreh Nevuchim, one second. Give me a moment. So maybe not right now, but the bottom, the Rambam and the Moreh Nevuchim, the third section, chapter 49, the Rambam discusses all the different forbidden sexual relationships, and one of them he mentions about the mamzer. It's not intended to be a punishment. It's a consequence of a relationship. It's a status of a person, not so much a punishment to the people who are involved in the story. But I don't want to split those hairs right now. Let me look back in the original sources we're reading. Let's talk about the netinim. Yeah, it's important. The netinim. Where should we start? Yisirei Bia, chapter 12. The same book, just chapter 12. Rabbenu, go take all the bags and eat them over there, and then come back when you're done. Just go over there in that chair. I let you. You don't come. Just because the microphone's right here, and everybody gets to hear all the crinkling. Or right behind Imam, if you want to be close to him. Yes, chapter 12. In halakha number 22, says the Rambam, Mi shenitgayer mishiva amamin. Whoever converts to Judaism from the 7 nations. Now we mentioned, remember that you can convert from the 7 nations. Amalek can also convert to Judaism. Enan asurin min Torah lavo b'kahal. There's no biblical prohibition that forbids the 7 nations from marrying and joining the Jewish people. Mean to marry into the Jewish people. V'adavar yadua. But we know, as historical fact, that the only people from the 7 nations that actually converted to Judaism and Hanan are the Givonim. Very good. V'Yoshua gazar alehem shu asurin lavo b'kahal. And Yehoshua, he made a decree, a ruling, that he forbade them from joining the Jewish people, meaning to marry into us. Echad zecharim v'echad nekevot, whether they're male or female. Unlike Ammon and Moab, said the decree was on the men, but not on the women. That's how David HaMelech's grandmother, converted to Judaism. V'lo asar otan ela bizman sheyesh mikdash. But Yehoshua only prohibited them from marrying us when there was a Beit Mikdash. Ne'emar, like it says in Yehoshua, v'chotvei etzim v'shoavei mayim levet Elohai. They will be wood choppers and water carriers for the house of our God. Talah hakatan b'mikdash. So he distanced them using the Beit Mikdash, meaning only when there is a Beit Mikdash standing did Yehoshua decree that the Givonim should be separate from us. V'hen hanikraim nitinim, and they are called nitinim, The fish netanam la'avodat hamikdash, because he gave them to the service of the Bet Hamikdash. They're called nitinim, those who were given. Ba David, along comes David, v'gazar alehem shelo yikansu bakahal leolam, and he decreed the Givonim cannot marry into the Jewish people forever. Bet Hamikdash, not Bet Hamikdash. Meaning David HaMelech comes, and he decrees more than what Yoshua decreed. V'chen meforash be'ezra, and this is explicitly mentioned in Ezra. ומן הנתינים שנתן דוד והשרים לעבודת הלוויים, הלמדת שלא תלה אותם במקדש. You see that over there already in that generation they did not mention the Bet HaMikdash, just that they were נתינים. ולמה גזר עליהם הוא ודינו? So why did he decree against them, him and his bedin? Listen very carefully. לפי שראה עזות ואכזריות שהייתה בהם, because he saw the brazenness and the cruelty that was in them. בעת שביקשו שבעת בני שאול בחיר אדוני לתלותם, when they asked to kill the 7 children or descendants of King Shaul, the chosen one of Hashem, why did he let them? That's a great, that sugya in its own right is a very complicated one. It's very hard. It's one of those stories in the Nevi'im that you don't always know, right? You don't always know what to do with those stories. והרגום ולא ריחמו עליהם. והרגום, they killed them and they didn't have any compassion on them. If you look in chapter 19 of the same section, chapter 19, the Rambam tells us if you look in the Halakha Yud Zayin, chapter 19, 17. See it? The Rambam writes, yes. Says the Rambam, a very important halakha. Kol hamishpachot becheskat kesherot. All of the families are considered kasher families. Abina, when it comes to this theme, all of them are considered kesherot families. Look at this. Umutar lisa mehen lechatechila, and you're allowed to marry them even ideally. Meaning you don't have to find a family that's for sure kasher. They're all Jewish families are kasher. V'af al piken. Nonetheless, I'm afraid to read this halakha because people get scared. Get scared. Im ראית שתי משפחות שמתגרות זו בזו תמיד. If you see 2 families that are always fighting with each other. או ראית משפחה שהיא בעלת מצה ומריבה תמיד. You see one family that is always fighting, always making problems, always. או ראית איש שהוא מרבה מריבה עם הכל ואז פנים ביותר. Or you see one individual who's always fighting with people, and they're always brazen and rude and cruel. חוששים להם. You have to be concerned that just like they have these bad character traits or bad judgment, that somewhere in the family tree they made bad mistakes, and that's how you have a descendant like this. וראוי להתרחק מהן, שאלו מיני פסלנות הן. You just stay away from them. You have to make a shidduch, stay away. Don't be saying they're not kasher. Just if you want a good idea what to look for people, stay away from troublemakers. No, he'll say that language too. וכן כל הפוסלת אחרים תמיד. Also, if you find somebody who all day long finds problems, that everybody else is not kasher. Kigon, I'm not saying somebody who finds, I don't like that person, but no. So it says, those people are not real Jews, and these people are not real Jews. And those people, all day long, you see this person? כגון שנותן שמץ במשפחות או ביחידים ואומר עליהן שהם ממזרים, he tells people they're ממזרים, their families are all ממזרים, all of those situations, חוששים לא שמא ממזר הוא. You worry that maybe this person himself is a ממזר. ואם אמר עליהן שהן עבדים, and if you those people are really slaves, חוששים לא שמא עבד הוא. You are concerned maybe he's really a slave. שכל הפוסל במומו פוסל. Because everyone who finds a flaw in somebody, usually that flaw is found in him. Notice, is the Rambam teaching you Musar here? Also, but this is an area of halakha. Meaning this phrase of, you find someone wrong with somebody else, it means that's who you are. That's a halakha. You find someone who accuses people all the time of certain averot, you should be very careful. Maybe that person has that same problem. But this is all the time. I was just going to say what Zev says. There's certain people all day long. That's a great sound effect. All day long, they talk about certain avirot. You know, probably that's the avirah that they're struggling with the most. Because what's on your mind, what preoccupies you all the time. All the time. There's certain people, they always ask certain questions. Why? That's the whole life is in that place. And the Rambam says one more step. Anybody who has brazenness and cruelty to them, and they hate human beings, racists, they hate people. He does not do kind things to other people. We assume that maybe he's a Givoni. What do you mean a Givoni? Well, everyone came from Givon. How could it be? Yeah, you say maybe this person's lineage comes from the tribe of Givon that converted to Judaism. Why? Because the signs of the holy people of Israel, Baishanim, V'Rachamanim, V'Gomnei Chasadim. They are humble people, compassionate people who do kindness with other people. Uvagivonim hu omer, and by the Givonim it says, Shemuel says, V'Givonim lo mi bnei Yisrael hema. The Givonim are not Jews. They're not from the children of Israel. Matityahu on this call? Matityahu, can you please, in a 10 seconds or less, give me a proper explanation? What does it mean when someone is not bnei Israel? Like you said today about bnei Adam.
So they don't have a mindset of Israel.
Yeah. Are we saying that maybe they're not actually Jews? No. Halachically, they might be Jews, but they're not Bnei Israel. Like a person is not Bnei Adam. What does it mean, not Bnei Adam? Matityahu, you...
Like a person with humanity?
I'm asking Matityahu for a reason. Matityahu.
Oh, sorry.
Why do we call those people Bnei Adam? Why?
Because they're connected. They're conscious of themselves. They're aware of themselves. They think about what they do the best other people.
Right. So, and I think your ways needs you right now. Matityahu is telling you something important. It's based off of something that Chacham Fa'ur writes. Bnei Adam, in Arabic, for example, when you want to say that someone is extra, like Avinoam. Avinoam was born Naim, right? So we call him Avinoam, like Abu Naim, like when I say in Abu, you're the father of. Your father takes responsibility for their generations. That's not like in the West. In the West, the father lets the generations go. It doesn't have anything to do with them. It's like how the Greeks gods created the world. They put them in existence and they push them off into the sunset. In Judaism, similar, but we always say the child of someone who's a b'nei something. Yeah. They are the children of, they inherited. That's how Avraham Avinu can have children, but not all of them are his children. Only those who inherit his spiritual legacy are his children. So when you say the Givonim are Jewish, but they're not Bnei Israel, this is not a jab at converts. This is a jab at who? People who refuse to inherit the values, the mindset of the Jewish people. And here, because they were brazen and they did not forgive Shaul HaMelech. Absolutely. Can you be born Jewish and have these flaws? Of course, that's what the Rambam is telling you. They did not have compassion on the sons of Shaul. What did they do wrong, the children of Shaul? And they didn't remember that we forgave them throughout history. You can't forgive our royal family? You can't forgive our king? Our leadership, Yehoshua. Even though the Givonim lied to us, we were compassionate to them. And now when the tables are turned, they show their true colors. They have no compassion on us. This is that we learn nothing from history. But let me tell you something even more. Today I was sitting at my table. I was preparing the shiur. And Elchanan was sitting quietly at the table next to me. Yes. And once he threw the ball into the kitchen. That was good. And I was, Rav Sadia Gaon has a commentary here. Rav Kapach has in the end of his commentary on the Torah of Rav Sadia Gaon, he has here all these little sections. I always, forgive me that I tell my kids, bring me the ugly book from the shelf. I don't know who made the cover of this book. Forgive me, I feel bad that I said it. This is the most beautiful book ever written, and why they put this cover. From here you learn, do not judge a book by its cover. Because there are books with beautiful covers, you open them and just use them as a doorstop. That's the only you should use them for. And this book, I don't know who made the cover, but the inside of it is gold. Mamash gold. And Rav Sadia Gaon, he asked 8 or 9 questions on the whole story of the Givonim. Really, everything you'd want to know about the Givonim. Really, when did Shaul kill the Givonim? Because, Rabbi Chaim David Halevy, my wife taught a class about this. So Rabbi Chaim David Halevy goes with the commentaries to say there were no actual Givonim that were killed. We cut off the food supply, the parnasah supply of Givon, and that's why we were considered killing them. Rav Sadia Gaon takes it literally. We did kill Givonim, meaning when we kill Nov and their servants, that their servants are Givonim. It was unintentional. It wasn't that many Givonim. Nobody tried to kill the Givonim in particular, but collateral damage with Shaul HaMelech's war with Nov, the city of Kohanim. Now, that being said, says Rav Sadia Gaon, so why are we so mad at the Givonim? At the end of the day, they were hurt. Meaning, it's normal. They were hurt. They want revenge. Says Rav Sadia Gaon something beautiful. What about the Kohanim? When we wipe out the city of Nov, are there Kohanim left? Of course. The other Kohanim, not all the Kohanim live in Nov. So where are all the cousins and the brothers and the sisters and the uncles and where are they? They decided that for the sake of the Jewish nation, they're not going to take revenge internally. They're not going to ask for Shaul HaMelech's family to die, because what's that going to help? It's only going to make war inside of the Jewish people. We don't make problems inside of Am Yisrael. The Kohanim were willing to forgive everything that Shaul HaMelech did to their family. And the question is, why won't the Givonim do the same exact thing? So Rav Sadia Gaon, that's what it means, Velo mi bnei Yisrael hema. They did not behave the way we would expect from the Jewish people to behave. It's a very powerful statement here. This is the reason why our Chachamim refuse that we should marry into the Givonim. When you marry a person, you marry their family. You marry their character traits. You marry every personality that you see. You know Henny? Henny once told me, Henny should hear that I mentioned her in a shiur once. Henny once said, genetics are such an amazing thing. When you argue with a 5-year-old version of yourself, and you realize that all the things you thought were nurture, that you made up, that you accomplished, your kids are born in their nature with it. All of those things. Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's your crazy uncle. Sometimes it's your long lost half brother. Who knows how it goes? Who knows? Yeah. All of those character traits come out in a family. You want to talk about? Let's not talk about nature. Don't be superstitious. Nurture. There are people who are raised in certain homes. They're taught that this is the right way to behave. This is the right way to react to something. This is the right way to do things. And then you marry that person. How do you want them all of a sudden overnight to forget where they came from? In their house, they broke windows. When they got mad, they broke plates. In their house, when they fight, they beat each other up. In their house, all kinds of crazy things. In their house, people get drunk. In their house, I can make a list of things. And then you marry them and forget superstition. It's nurture. You're marrying all of those problems. Those problems come into your life. They come into your home. Don't think. How many times do you have to make decisions and you say, what would my parents do? Yosef Tzaddik, he's in Egypt. He's about to be seduced by the wife of Potiphar. And what do Chachamim tell us? Dmut yukono shel aviv, an image of his father appeared in front of him. Now, I know people like to take midrashim literally. There was some image of his father and he stuck his fingers on the ground, famous midrashim. At the end of the day, in his most base moment, in a human being's most critical moments where there's no brain. Because in Arayot, when it comes to Yetzer Hara, there is no brain. Erva, Arayot, is all about lust and all about base needs. When you peeled Yosef HaTzadik down to his most basic level, what do the Mekubalim call Yosef? Yisod. He's the Sefirah of Yisod, foundation. When you peel back all the way, by the way, those who don't ever take time, I'm not a Mekubal, but Kabbalah has profound insights to teach about the way human thinks the experiences that human beings have. If anything, if you're going to study from some of the crazy psychologists or psychiatrists that ever lived, you can definitely study from some of them who studied the Jewish psyche and the way that our Chachamim viewed or didn't view. You don't have to agree with them, but here you saw the foundation. You peel back all the layers of a person. Yosef HaTzadik has nothing to hold on to except for what would my father do. At that moment, he made the right decision because he was raised the right way. When you get married to what is my spouse going to do in a moment of crisis? Based on it's not just parents, it's schooling, it's neighborhoods, it's the community they grew up in, the culture they grew up in, it's the streets that they lived in, all of those. I'm not saying just parents are a problem. Every person has thousands of pieces, moving pieces that affect who they are. Says the Rambam, there's just certain people you don't want to get in bed with. Because the things you're going to have to deal with on a national level, on a communal level, on a family level, you don't want to deal with that. Jewish, of course, they're halachically Jewish. The Givonim were accepted by Yehoshua. Which Bedin is better than that? But just because they were accepted by Yehoshua does not mean that's the right people for you to marry. But I know here, and I'm just going to pause for a moment. Many people have used this teaching to try to say, could you read Harav Peretz's book on Giyur over there? Many people have tried to use this idea to put down Gerim in general. Yeah? Don't marry converts because you know where they come from and their background and their history and da-da-da-da-da. I hear this a lot. It's not something new to me. And so I know that everything I've said right now could chas v'shalom feed into an ideology that I don't even agree with. In fact, my wife was recently speaking to somebody. Can I share? Yeah. Not the facts, just the statement that was made. Somebody said, yeah, they're wary to date a convert because they still are a little bit goyish left inside of them. Now, obviously, that was not someone from this community, right? Nobody in our community would ever speak like that.
Generations of the Jewish family. Those kind of bad midot. Nothing to do with it.
Thank you, Zeb.
You have to understand complexity.
We have here. Let me see if I can pull it up quickly, because I have my notes in my book. But let me see very quickly if I can pull it up here. Harav Peretz quotes in his. So Harav Peretz quoted here. Now, forgive me that I'm not pulling up exactly where. Harav Peretz quotes actually from an Ashkenazi source, from Sefer Hasidim, if I remember correctly. It tells me it's time to review the book. It's hard for me. I don't have my notes. I don't actually know where to run and look. Harav Peretz quotes here an Ashkenazi source about a man who wanted to get married. Maybe here. No. It's okay. Sefer Chazin was asked about a girl that comes from she converted, and her parents are non-Jews, but they're very good people. And he has a choice to two shidduchim, between a girl who comes from a non-Jewish home, to very good parents, or people that are born Jewish, but the parents are horrible people. And the Yehuda Chassid says, marry the one who converted to Judaism, because she will give you children who are tzaddikim. And the other one are going to give you horrible children. The family you're going to raise with her are going to be terrible people. This is a very important thing. It goes two ways. Well, just because you were born Jewish means you're a good person? I spoke about this in my shiur earlier today. How many Jews do we know that don't fit the Rambam's definition of what it means to be Jewish? They're not humble, and they're not kind, and they're not compassionate to anybody. And therefore, those are Jews you should run away from like a fire. This goes two ways. What this teaches you is it's all about who you are and who you become and who you make yourself. People fail to recognize that Judaism is not a country club. You don't get to be born here and then everything is great after that. We expect, as an alphabetic Jewish community, a very high level of literacy, of working on midot, on character traits, of understanding how people work, how people think, how communities, how the nation operates. We expect a lot from Jewish people. And don't think that if you see bad midot somewhere, they're going to disappear overnight. And maybe next week we're going to get it. I don't know if I have a class next week. Can I read you one last source before we call it a night? We mentioned here a Kohen who married a Kohen Gadol, who marries a widow. These are all people who don't come back from war, right? What do you see from this? Okay, fine. Baruch is running with the positive messages. That's good. No, you're right. That's the halakha you learn. That's not what I was going at with the kohen. Rambam says, Almana lekohen gadol, gerusha v'chalutza lekohen hediot. Let me pull up a halakha for you. You found it? No. Rabbani, thank you. I'm surprised that it's in letter Shin Ayin Zayin 377 in the book Sefer Hasidim. You will see the source there. Okay? And if I mentioned it a little differently than what's written there, so the truth is what's written there, not how I mentioned it. Sorry. In the laws of, I thought there was more table. In the laws of Shemitah and Yovel, the Rambam mentions that not only is the tribe of Levi exempt from going to war, but also all Jewish people who elect to be like the tribe of Levi and they rid themselves of the needs of this world. We're going to discuss this. We're going to have a shiur about, in general, about whether going to the army for yeshiva students and that. But the question is, are Leviim really exempt from going to war? And the answer is, of course not. Or else there would not be Kohanim who are coming back from war, Kohanim that are staying in war, if Kohanim and Leviim are exempt from war. And I saw a source here. Yeah, that's something. So I want to show you, if you look in Shemuel Bet. So you go to Tanakh, click Samuel 2. Chapter 23, verse 20. So Chav Gimel, Chav. Yeah. Chapter 23, verse 20. Who's Benayahu Elchanan? Did you learn about that with Imaya? Benayahu ben Yehoyada. Ben Ish Chayil. Rav Pe'alim. Mekav Tze'el. Can you read to me the translations of those words in the King James of the Sephariah? Yeah. That's what it says? Oh, that's quite literal. Yeah, he comes from Kavtze'el. That's really could be, but then Chachamim are Doresh Mekavtze'el, that he was gathering mitzvot maybe. He gathered people to learn Torah. So who is he? It says, Hu hikat shnei Ariel Moav, v'hu yarad v'ikat ha'ari betoch ha'be'or b'yom ha'shaleg. That he was a famous warrior. He did some pretty famous things. Right, that's, you have here in Pasuk 18 that Avishai, who's the brother of Yoav ben Surya, right? So here I want just to point to you, does Sephariah have Radak, the commentary of Radak? If you click, Radak is my favorite commentary, perhaps in the whole Tanakh, everywhere. Rabbi David Kimche, he writes, yeah? Ben Ish Chai, it's written, but it says, pronounced, Ken Ktiv. It's written Ben Ish Chai. Ukri, but you read it, Ish Chayil. Retzono lomar, he means to say, Ki Yehoyada aviv, gam ken haya gibor chai. That Yehoyada, his father, was also a warrior. Meaning he's not just a warrior himself, but his father was also a warrior. Ma shekatuv chai, and that which it says that it was, instead of chai, it was chai, Darshu ba rabbis teach us in Masechet Berachot shaya tzadik gamur, that he was a righteous tzaddik. But tzaddikim afilu b'mitatam kiruim chayim, and that we call tzaddikim alive even when they're dead. Yonatan tirgem, and Yonatan translated. Okay, who's Yonatan? Yonatan ben Uziel. Let's look at the next thing. Et Shnei Ariel Moav, you see that? What number is that in Radak? Does it say it? Do I have numbers? It's the fourth one. Even though Benayahu was a Kohen. And Kohen is not allowed to become impure by touching dead bodies. To fight the enemies of God is a mitzvah. כשציווה הקדוש ברוך הוא להילחם בשבעה גויים ובשאר האומות המצרות לישראל, when it was a mitzvah to fight against the 7 nations or other nations that caused suffering to the Jewish people, לא חילק בין כהנים לישראל. He did not differentiate between Kohanim and the rest of the Jewish people. וכן ציווה להיות כהן משוח מלחמה ולהיכנס עם ישראל למלחמה. And הקדוש ברוך הוא commanded there should be a Kohen משוח who goes to war with the Jews. והנה פנחס. פנחס himself טימא עצמו למצווה. He made himself impure for a mitzvah, כשהרג זמרי וחוזבי, when he killed Zimri and Kozbi. וכן הלך למלחמת מדיין עם ישראל, and Pinchas goes to war against Midian with the Jewish people. I mean, what do you see? Yeah, very good. Kohanim go to war. What does the Rambam mean when he says they do not go to war like the rest of the Jewish people? Okay, that we're going to talk about. But it's not that Kohanim don't go to war. There is no blanket exemption for people to go to war. And in fact, our book of the Tanakh is full of Kohanim. Real Kohanim, not people who pretend to be Kohanim and make coffee instead of being Kohanim. Real Kohanim who go to war. Maybe not. Maybe not when they kill people, or at least not in certain... Yeah, well, that's a great question. We should learn that too. For right now, I'm going to wish us all a good night. What I wanted everyone to walk away with from the shiur was that just like you see that Benayahu is the son of a warrior, so he's a warrior, there's a lot more to a person than just who they are. But who they are is the most important part. I mean, all of us became people that maybe our parents wanted or didn't want us to become. You can overcome anything. Judaism believes that very much. But sometimes when we fall back on our most base, who we are, what we are, you'd rather be involved with people who, when they fall back on something, they fall back to being who they are is still good. Yes, that when you peel back all the layers, all the midot, all the character, everything that was there, all of those things should be good. And you see that. You see that everywhere. You see that in life. You see that with people that you work for, that you work with. You see people that you interact with in your whole life. There's a lot more to... Sure, while I'm thinking, while I'm... What do our HaChamim tell us? Adam nikal, bekoso, kiso, bekaso. You could tell a person when they're stingy, when they're money, when they're pressed for money. You could tell about a person a lot when they are angry. You could tell a lot about a person when they're drunk. People say, I was drunk, I didn't mean it. No. You were drunk, so you were honest. The rest of your life you spend wearing a mask. You show off to the world a certain person. By the way, I believe that every person has the right to present themselves a certain way to the world. Nobody has to know all of what's going on inside of you. But at the end of the day, when you peel back the mask, when a person gets drunk, when a person gets angry, what is angry? They lose their cool, they go nuts. People do a lot of things out of rage, out of anger. Things that they don't even... American law might even understand it to be insanity. A person gets so mad, huh? Yeah, HaRambam say, Kol minei gehenom sholtim bo. The Arizal says the person even loses their neshama. Oh, that's a person who loses it, literally loses it, meaning they lose all of the cover-up that they usually walk around with. And those kind of people, you wish... I don't know if I should tell you this story. I once heard from a Talmid Chacham that he was once with a certain Rosh Yeshiva who drank a little bit too much on Purim. He didn't usually drink. I mean, he didn't really get drunk, but he drank a little too much on Purim. And he was on the table, slumped over. But if I tell you the name of the Rosh Yeshiva, I'm allowed to tell you. They told the story. His name was Rabbi Aharon Lichtenstein. Yes? Rosh Yeshiva, Yeshivat Gush. Meaning not the kind of guy who was, you should be choshed. He was son-in-law of Rabbi Soloveitchik. Not the kind of guy you'll be choshed, he's a drunkard, right? It's not some rabbis you think, I'm afraid, you're going to think, anyways, he's drunk all the time. They say when he was drunk, he was busy repeating Mishnayot and Gemarot and Halachot. And, I mean, when you peel down all of his layers, when? Very good. Meaning, when you peeled back all the layers, what was left there? Still something very beautiful. That's who you're looking for when you want to marry somebody, when you want to raise children with somebody. That's who you're looking for when you want to start a business with somebody. This week someone had to call me about a business partner is busy trying to take from them and steal from them. And you want at the end of the day that the person that you're stuck with, whatever it's going to be, even your neighbors, Hachek mishachen ra. You have to stay away from bad neighbors. Why? The people that are going to be in your life every day, every night, all the time, you need to make sure that those people, when you peel back the onion, what's left inside is still something beautiful. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu should help us, that we should never make mistakes, and that all of us should become those people, so that other people around us can also want to be around us and be connected to us and be married to us and to love us. And we should make HaKadosh Baruch Hu very proud. Thank you for learning with me.